everyone. Today for our inverted classroom, we're going to be examining a paper written by Lofters et al. That looks at the differences in incidence rates for prostate cancer among immigrant men versus non-immigrant men in Ontario. Previous studies have shown that someone's likelihood of developing cancer may be linked to their immigration status. However, this effect has not been explored specifically for prostate cancer. As gaps in our understanding of the effect of immigration status on prostate cancer could lead to ineffective healthcare delivery, it's important that we investigate this relationship. That's exactly what the authors in the study we're going to be examining today did. They hypothesized that male immigrants in Ontario would have different incidences of prostate cancer than non-immigrants living in Ontario.
The design that was used was a population-based retrospective cohort study in which two groups are compared using existing data. We think that the study design best suits a hypothesis because it allows the researchers to analyze a large dataset in a relatively short time. The researchers of this study obtained data from the ICES, ORC, and from the IRCCPR. For the study population, they identified all the males in Ontario aged 20 years and older. To separate the immigrant men from the Ontario long-term residents, information about the males from the IRCCPR were considered to be immigrants. The immigrant men were further categorized by their country of origin. Other confounding variables affecting prostate cancer were age and neighborhood income quintile. For the immigrant males, immigration admission category, family class, refugees or asylum seekers, and the time since landing in Canada were other factors. To describe the cohort study, the researchers of the study performed a descriptive analysis and calculated the chi-square statistics. Using a log binomial model, they estimated the adjusted incidence rate ratio. All the analysis in the study were performed using the statistical analytical system.
The main findings from this study were that West African and Caribbean male immigrants had the highest incidence rate of prostate cancer at 171% and 91% more likely, respectively, to develop it compared to long-term residents. South Asian and East Asian male immigrants had the lowest incidence rate, being 55% and 47%, respectively, less likely to develop prostate cancer. Most other immigrant groups had relatively similar prostate cancer incidence rates as long-term residents, and increased age and income were also correlated to having higher incidence rates of prostate cancer regardless of immigration status. The overall study population was 45,163,419 individuals, and of those, 8,408,633 individuals were immigrants. Chi-square tests were performed for all years for the data, and a 95% confidence interval was used when analyzing data. Possible interpretations are that West African males potentially are genetically predisposed for developing prostate cancer. Because many Caribbean individuals historically are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, this may explain why Caribbean male immigrants also have higher prostate cancer incidence rates. Moreover, Canadian immigrants also have a lower prostate cancer incidence rate when compared to long-term residents, and newer immigrants are surprisingly more susceptible to developing prostate cancer, and with time their incidence rate trends downwards, which is not aligned with the healthy immigrant effect, which we touched upon later.
The authors conclude that from 2008 to 2016, the age-standardized incidence rate of prostate cancer was significantly higher amongst immigrants from West Africa and the Caribbean than other immigrants and long-term residents of Ontario. This aligns with the author's hypothesis because the results are significant, such that the West African and Caribbean immigrant males have a 171% and a 91% higher incidence rate than long. The strength of the study is through the use of the population-based retrospective study design because it allowed the researchers to assess a large dataset in a relatively quick and low-cost manner. As for the limitations, firstly, the databases misclassify the immigrants who lived in another province before Ontario as non-immigrants or long-term residents, which groups immigrants as non-immigrants, causing the results to be null. Secondly, they stratified the immigrants of the study by the region of origin. There could be differences in prostate cancer within that specific country that contribute to the incidence of prostate cancer, that is, diet, environment, laws, etc. This is important to note because these variables were not controlled in this research, which may have influenced the results.
This study is somewhat supported by previous literature. In a study by JT McDonald, he found that overall immigrant men had lower incidence rates of prostate cancer when compared to men born in Canada. He also found that South Asian men had the overall lowest prostate cancer incidence rates. Other research also suggests that higher socioeconomic status correlates with increased prostate cancer rates. However, it is important to comment on how this study was not consistent with the healthy immigrant effect. The healthy immigrant effect is an observed phenomenon where new immigrants are healthier than native residents and over time will become equally healthy with the residents, but in this study the opposite effect is observed.
In terms of explanations for the observed results, although the authors of this paper didn't specifically examine why immigrants from West Africa or the Caribbean had different incidences of prostate cancer, they did suggest that it could be because of economic or environmental disparities or because of potential genetic differences. Because they didn't do this investigation, they suggest that future research look into the current and historical mechanisms behind these statistics in order to ensure that the healthcare system is best serving the needs of all Canadians.